This session covers topics related to printing worksheets. In this topic, I'll be talking about how you do a simple printout of your data, talking about how you remove grid lines or show grid lines in your printout, show you how you can fit a worksheet to a single piece of paper, and also how you can use a different view called the Page Break Preview. I'm using a file again that you can download called Sample Files. The name of the worksheet I'll be starting with is called Simple Print. On this spreadsheet, we have a list of different services, what they did in 2011 compared to 2012, showing their variance, and also showing what their percentages of their variance compared to 2011. And I want to be able to print off this worksheet. So to do a simple print of a worksheet, all you do is you click on the File tab. On the left-hand side of the window, click on Print. It takes you into a window that shows you a print preview of your data. And on the left-hand side, it shows you different options that you could use to change the printout of your data. For example, if I want to print this off in landscape rather than portrait, I would go to Portrait Orientation on the left-hand side and click and choose Landscape Orientation, and it'll just rotate it so it's in landscape. I'll change this back from landscape to Portrait Orientation. If I had several pieces of paper on here, you would see at the bottom it will show 1 of 2, 1 of 3, 1 of 4, and so on. I could change the size of the paper from letter paper to legal paper perhaps. I could change my margins by clicking on Custom Margins and choose a different margin setting choice. Or if I wanted to actually set margins myself, I would go to Custom Margins at the bottom of this panel to take me into the Page Setup window where I can change my margins to have different settings on it. I'm not going to make a change here, so I'll click on Cancel. So to do a printout, all you do again, you click on File and Print, and you make your changes on the left-hand side of the window. You would then identify how many copies you want on your printout and click on Print. Now on my printout, my grid lines are showing up, and I may decide not to have the grid lines show up. So to turn grid lines on or off, I go to the bottom part of this panel on the left-hand side. I click on Page Setup, and in this window, the same Page Setup window, I go to the Sheet tab at the top and click. And on the left-hand side, I remove the check mark where it says Grid Lines, and I click OK, and the grid lines have now been taken off of my printout. So it all depends what I want to see. If I'm going to put them back on again, I go back to Page Setup, I go to Sheet, the Sheet tab, and click on Grid Lines to put them back in again, and click OK. It's a simple way of printing off your information. In this next example, I want to talk about how you fit a worksheet onto one piece of paper. I've changed to a different sheet now called Fit Print. I'm still in the same file though called Sample Files. This spreadsheet is a bit wider than the previous one, so I want to be able to print this off. So I'll click on the File tab, down to Print. I can see down here it's going to go on 2 pieces of paper. So there's the first page. Here is the second page. A little bit rolls over. Go back to the first page. So I want to get this on one piece of paper. So I'm going to go through a couple ideas first of all. One of my clear options could be is to change the orientation. So go to Portrait Orientation and choose Landscape Orientation, and that'll rotate it and fit it on one piece of paper. But I might want to have this in Portrait, so maybe that's not the right solution in this case. So I'm going to go back and change this back to Portrait Orientation again. So I still have 2 pieces of paper. My next choice would be is to change the margins to make smaller margins on here. So go back to Custom Margins on the left-hand side and click. I'll go to where it says Custom Margins ... and click. And in here, I'll make my margins down to 1/2 inch on the left and right-hand side. So making smaller or tighter margins, giving me more space for printing. And I'll click OK. And that still doesn't fix it, but it did give me an extra column of information on here. So I still have 2 pieces of paper going to print out. And then my last option would be is to fit this on one piece of paper. And I do that by going on the left-hand side where it says No Scaling and click. And I'll choose Fit Sheet on one page. This isn't always the right option depending on how big your printout is. Sometimes you want to maybe fit all your columns on one page. You might have many rows down though, or fit all your rows on one page and have a printout that goes across quite a ways. So I'll choose Fit Sheet on one page, and that'll shrink the font down so it all fits on one piece of paper. And then the last step I'd go to the Print button to send it off to the printer. So that's how you go about fitting things onto one piece of paper. Change your margins first, consider changing the orientation, and then eventually use the fit sheet to one page option. And in this last topic in this video, I want to talk about how you can use a different view called the Page Break Preview. This is a fairly big spreadsheet. It goes down quite a few rows, fairly wide. I want to just see first of all how many pieces of paper this would print out on. So click on the File tab. I'll move down to Print. You can see down here I'm going to get 6 pieces of paper. So there's the second page, third page, fourth page, and so on. Go back to the first page. Well, in this case here, I want to change the view of my screen so I can see where the page breaks are taking place. So I now know I have 6 pieces of paper as my printout. I'm going to go back to the Home tab. So I want to now change the view. This is called the normal view. I want to change the view to what's called the page break preview. So I'm going to take my mouse to the View tab above the ribbon, and towards the left-hand side of the ribbon, I'm going to choose Page Break Preview. Make it a little window up. I'm going to click OK. I'm just going to zoom my screen up so you can see this a little bit better. And on here, it's going to show a bit of a watermark behind page 1 here. Page 4 is over here. These dotted lines are where the page breaks are taking place. So I'm going to scroll down further. There's page 2, there's page 5, and even down further, there's page 3 and page 6. So what I want to have happen is I want this to fit all the columns on one piece of paper. So I'm going to take this page break that Excel put in. I'm going to move it over to the far right. So to move a page break, all you do is you put your mouse on the dotted line. You hold your left mouse button down. You pull it off to the right in this case. And now all my columns are going to fit on one piece of paper. If I scroll down further, I'll see there's page 1, page 2, and it all fits on page 2 on my piece of paper. So if I decide I want to change where the page break is down here, I could do so. I'll just put my mouse on the page break on line 60 and drag it down so it's at the bottom of line 65 perhaps. And there's page 1 and page 2. So it's just a nice view to work with. If you're trying to look to see where your page breaks are, you can maneuver them around so everything fits on less pieces of paper. When I'm finished working on page break preview, I prefer not to work in this view other than for doing the changing the page breaks. I'll go back to the normal view now. So click on normal up on the ribbon, and I'll go back to the Home tab to get back to my regular ribbon. To make that change of view again, I went to the View tab, I went to Page Break Preview, and I then have my Page Break Preview in front of me that I can then move the page breaks around. And then go back to normal when I'm finished. And to see the result of this, if I now go back to the File tab and go to Print, rather than 6 pieces of paper, I now get this on 2 pieces of paper instead. That's how you can use the Page Break Preview to get your printout on less pieces of paper.